Hi everyone, we've conquered Mondstadt and built a palace. You can see the beautiful Mondstadt behind me, and we are busy looking at it from our wonderful abode. Actually, I'm just kidding, this is Ningguang's shield. It's pretty cool. We will discuss her shield, Yanfei, and Tartaglia in this sort of review. So if you guys don't know what's happening, we've got the new Event Wish banner coming up in the version 2. So here it is, it's Tartaglia. I don't know. I know some people are like very picky about how you pronounce his name. I'm sorry. I'm just going to say Tartaglia. Read it as it is. Yan Fei Ningguang and Chong Yu. So let us discuss all these characters. So this character off the bat is very difficult to use, and I think that is why his appeal amongst the fans isn't that great. So I think for the average Genshin Impact player, this character is way too difficult to get like the proper value out of. In that sense, a lot of people will tell you that his damage is mediocre when it in fact is not. This character is one of those characters that thrives on mobs and doing lots of AoE damage, and we will demonstrate it. But what makes this character difficult to work with and also gives him an incredibly high skill ceiling is his abilities. So he's a bow user primarily, and then once he hits the enemies, he does like a bit of damage. But the interesting thing about him is when you use his E ability, he gets like these cool swords, and then he can sort of hit the enemy with melee attacks, which is really quite awesome. Once you cancel out, you can see there's a cooldown that happens, and this is where the character is very interesting. The longer you are on the field, the longer that cooldown will be. So if you are on the field for a very long time hitting enemies, then your E cooldown can potentially go up to 45 seconds before you can use your E ability again. So this is something that you need to manage very carefully within the context of your team, because imagine you're doing all this damage. Now you're going to go to Yanfei, you're going to burn some stuff, throw in some jellyfish, build a new Trump wall, and like unleash some like attacks on Titan, all sorts of cool things. And now when you're back, once you're back out to Taglia, well, we're still on cooldown. It's like, come on, dude, I need to fight. Come on, I've already burned all my other cooldowns, and now finally you can actually do something. So managing the cooldowns of this character in between your rotations is what makes this character very difficult. So I would not recommend this if you are a beginner, and I would not recommend this if you're not intending on properly putting investment into this character. In fact, I would say the same about Yanfei and Ningguang, but we will cover them a bit later in this video. So the problem with Child in general for me isn't the damage he does, but the fact that he is very difficult to use in synchronized team rotations, and to use him in a desynchronized team rotation. In other words, synchronized just means you've got a set way in which you use your abilities and you stack them to get maximum damage. You need to be very careful and strict on the timings to get max value. And in a desynchronized rotations where you use different abilities at different times, to get different effects and sort of spread your damage out in a different way. It also then makes this difficult hard to use, but of course, if you can do it successfully, you can do a lot of damage. So enough theoretical talk. I've shown you the one aspect of the E ability, but the really cool aspect of Child is, let's just put him in this domain, is his Riptide mechanic. And that is actually where the fun begins. So I was very disappointed with the Nobushi and Kairage sort of nerf where it was like easy to knock them off their feet. So that was just sort of like, well, just use Venti Q and everyone's stacked and you can kill all of them, which sort of also is in a certain sense like a bit of a nerf to Tartaglia, because what he thrives on is marking an enemy, like this guy over here. You'll see if there's like a special mark, and when I hit him with a fully charged shot, it like does that like little slashes and riptides and stuff like that. So now if I go to another character and kill this guy, that you can see the little splash mark is now suddenly transferred to this guy. And now I can also then trigger this and like do like more like damage like that. So I'm just going to wait for the enemies to group up. But once the enemies are grouped up, let's just see for all of them to come into range. Come on, all of you get into range. You can then press your Q, and then all the enemies will then be given this like Riptide Mark effect, which is really awesome. And then whenever you then trigger it with a fully charged shot, you can do some extra damage as well. And I think it's also with the melee, you'll be able to trigger some extra damage right at the end of an attack combo. So this character's got incredible AoE potential. So I would definitely I think a lot of people underestimate it. You might ignore the damage that you see on the screen because my child's not very highly built, but he can do quite a lot as a character, particularly if you've got large mobs and you're transferring this Riptide mark onto different enemies. It's an incredible AoE sort of application, and it's quite strong. We are still out of our melee stance, but I'm going to quickly show you what we can do with the melee sort of ultimate because it's also a bit different. Just going to mark this guy. Yes, and I forgot to tell you, you can mark multiple enemies at once, which is really cool. So now we're going to hit all of them at the same time, and you can see it's like that double slash effect, which really does like a lot of damage. So there's obviously his kit's very intricate in the way in which his abilities sort of like play together, but that's like what's cool about this character. So now that we've sort of reviewed him, let us review Yanfei and Ningguang. So the way Yanfei and Ningguang work very similarly, essentially you want to attack the enemies, you get like a stack. In her case, and Yanfei's case, it's a Scarlet Seal, and in Ningguang's case, it's called a Star Jade. But effectively, you hit the enemy, and you can see. Oh, okay, I just killed my own character because I was careless. Let's just sort of heal her up. Just knock all these guys off their feet. Let's just bring in Yonfet back. My bad, sorry, because she's like a low level. But basically, let's just hit, and you'll see there's like one. I've got like two little seals there, and then once I've got my two seals, let's just wait for it to do a charge attack, and the enemy's like finish hitting. So now once I do a charge attack, we consume all of those, and then we do like lots of damage. The same with Ningguang. We're just going to sort of hit the enemies, gain some. You can see right at the back, you see these floating rocks. They're like the little star jades that you get, and then when you do a charge attack, you hit all of them. You can see they're all three of them hitting the enemy at once. Also pretty cool. So let's just quickly leave the domain. That is typically how these characters work. My advice to you would be don't build any of these characters. Don't build Yanfei, don't build Tartaglia, don't build Ningguang. They are very advanced characters and they are only there if you are really good at the game and you know what you are probably doing. These characters typically, for them, for particularly for Yanfei and Ningguang to shine, you need all six of their constellations. Otherwise, in my opinion, it's not worth it. But they are excellent. Don't underestimate the charge attack that Yanfei can do. I've hit personally on my other account with this character. We've hit about, I think, 20 to 30 charge attack very easily in a very quick succession. They are very strong. The big character on this bandit, Tartaglia, if you don't have him, skip him. If you do have him, it might be worth putting for constellations, but consider the fact that if you don't have him, there's not going to be another rerun of his banner for probably quite some time because he's like the third in the row. So if you're going to get him, you're going to have to dedicate a lot to him. Otherwise, it's going to be a safe skip. There are new characters coming. And in fact, I think there was just Genshin Impact just like 10 minutes ago spoiled the Ito Aritaki, I think. Might have butchered that name. Like there's a new character that's coming out, a new Geo character. So look forward to him. But if you're someone that's dedicated to high skilled level gameplay, you can use Tartaglia, Yanfei, and Ningguang. And unlike the Kokomi banner, which gives you a fully and like complete team that you can use, the Tartaglia banner is not giving you a very strong team, unfortunately. So uh, let's go back here. This team comp is not very strong, and because of the fact that all these guys want to take up field time to deal the maximum damage, build their stacks, and of course Tartaglia wants to take up a lot of field time. So as a team comp on its own, not very good. And that said, don't underestimate this character. He is pretty cool. Personally, I don't want to use him, and my bias is going to sound very silly, but I prefer female characters. That's just me, but you might feel different. All right. Cheers, guys.